Friends, you've heard me talk about my mental health story, and I'll continue to do so. But from time to time, I like to open up this space to others who want to share their journey. Perhaps it's a personal story. Maybe it's a healing tool and technique. The point is, I want to keep talking and having an open dialogue so we can end the silence around mental health. Thank you for listening. Welcome back to the Happy Pill Podcast, friends. I'm so excited you're here. I have a very special guest today in Scott Millman. He is from Michigan. He is co-owner of T.R.A.C, T.R.A.C, Total Running and Athletic Conditioning. I'm very pleased to have him on the show because as a running coach, he is going to share some of his tools and techniques that help his athletes, who some of them will have mental health issues. He will also talk about his previous job working with veterans and first responders who have post-traumatic stress disorder, post-traumatic stress, and TBI, traumatic brain injury. So a lot of beautiful information coming to you, friends, and thank you for listening. Scott, thank you for being here. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ursula. This has been a couple weeks in the making for you and I, and I'm excited to be here and glad we can finally get on and have this conversation.
Absolutely. It's so important. It's all about resonance for me, right? We're not the only ones. And the more information we have, the more we can help one another. So one of the first questions I want to talk about, what is T.R.A.C? Can you talk about that?
So T.R.A.C came about out of my love of running and specifically trail running. Mm-hmm. I have a couple of bad knees, had a back surgery, right? The injuries take its toll. So I primarily stay on trail. And I got to tell you, I absolutely love trail running, love the community, which we'll get into a little bit later. Sure. On how that impacts runners and their mental health, the socialization aspect, and have been doing ultra runs since probably the mid 90s and absolutely love it. And then Laura, my fiance, the co-owner, as you so graciously threw it in there, is my partner in crime and in business. And she handles the physical therapy side of our program.
That's a nice blend. Yeah,
it's a very good blend.
Yeah, that's a very good plan. So how does it actually work, though? What is it that you're doing? You are a track coach. You are a running coach.
Correct. So we do a lot of online. We do a lot of online plans. But beyond that, we have conversations with our athletes. We deal with the mental side of running and maybe things that aren't running, as the case may be, because we all know that, we have lives. And that kind of encroaches on training, or maybe the vice versa. A lot of times for ultra runners and us longer runners, our training encroaches on our personal lives, and there's a delicate balance there. Mm-hmm. So we deal with the running, we deal with everything in between, life, the mental issues, the training, the letdowns, the injuries. There are a number of things that pop up that we'll address with our athletes during the course of a program.
Okay. And so can you explain some of the mental health issues that some of your athletes will actually have or experience through your training process or through their training process?
It varies. And I think one of the things that we see, obviously coming out of COVID, depression was a big one, anxiety. And I'll be honest, looking at going back to doing races, Laura and I have been together a couple of years now, and she met me at a race, and I finished up one of my 50Ks, one of the first ones, and nobody's at the finish line because it was during COVID. It was strange. And then, going to an aid station where you have other runners touching food and going through and you're not wearing a mask and just kind of those early fears. So that anxiety kind of encroached itself onto me and my trail running. It was tough for a little bit to get over some of that. So we've seen that, but I think depression is probably one of the bigger ones, along with anxiety that our runners have been dealing with over the last few years.
Right. Wow. So then how does T.R.A.C and your coaching with your clients, how does that help with some of their mental health issues?
Oh, that's a great question. I think we tend to build, Laura and I really try to build a supportive and non-judgmental environment when we're building programs. I think that, somebody may have a goal of a 5K and they've never run a step in their life. Where you have other runners, including myself, that are ultra runners. We've run 100Ks, we've run 50 milers, and there's a little bit of an intimidation factor there. Yeah, don't even.
Seriously?
Yeah, don't even ask. We do crazy stuff all the time. The goal is 100 miles. I still have not achieved my 100 miler yet. But we all
my
have different
goodness.
goals. So, encouraging those individuals that want to, whatever their goal may be, is just making sure that we're non-judgmental in whatever those goals and dreams happen to be.
Right. Providing a safe environment.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
That's what I find key, especially going through any form of depression like I have. Safety, so regardless of what you're doing, you want to be with, a coach, a training, or a team that is going to provide that safety outlet. So in your experience with training these athletes and getting them going, are you seeing the fluctuations during their journey from like starting, middle? And what are you
Absolutely.
noticing?
It varies because we deal with injuries, and injuries are a part of sports and athletics. So from a coaching standpoint, as we're training, we're dealing with those, and then you feel like you're letting yourself down, you're letting your coach down. You may not be hitting the trails or the road as often as you want, and I think that's where we need to be very mindful of the individual and where they're at in their journey, in terms of what's their mental well-being. You need to be supportive. Do they need additional assistance? Do they need to be checking in with a therapist if they're working with a therapist or a counselor? Do they need to be checking in with their doctor because maybe they're being medicated for whatever reason, and maybe that needs to be touched. So we tend to try and work with the total team, so that may be a therapist and maybe a counselor or a doctor, but be very mindful of where the athlete is in that process. And as having dealt with this, sometimes life just takes over, and it has nothing to do with running or sports or anything else. Sometimes it's a job, and we're dealing with job issues, layoffs, maybe just out of the clear blue, you have a flare up of PTS, and that prevents you from going to work for a week. And
I just had that like a couple of nights ago. I had PTSD nightmare, and I was like, Scott, I'm so sorry, I have to postpone. And you're like, totally. Right. And because it does come up, it's so funny because you're saying, because as this, and I'm like, I don't know about running 5, 10, 1500 K runs. I'm like, no, I don't know that part, but absolutely mental health aspect. Yeah. Like you and like your clients, right? It can happen at any time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So does that alter then how you train with them?
It does. I think the training plan has to be fluid, and it has to be adjustable for the needs of our athletes. And so we make those adjustments. And I think that's where the compassion and the understanding of what they're dealing with and how they're dealing with it. And then we tailor the plan to that. And if we need to step back, we need to be mindful of that and step back, because it's not about the performance, right? It's about the journey. And that journey may be delayed. We may have some bumps in the road, as you well know, because we went through one the other day. Yeah. And so as a coach, it's up to me to create that safe environment and build that trust, and say, hey, it's okay. Let's deal with this problem. I'm here if you need me, and we'll work through it, and we'll come back and we'll readjust.
It's like that, it's okay to not be okay. And this is something that I personally struggle with, because I know I can say that to other people, and I will fully believe it for other people. But for myself, I haven't been able to accept it yet. Right. I mean, I'd imagine that that's going to just happen with anyone. That's why I talk about, because I'm like, am I the only one that doesn't believe that it's okay to not be okay? But yet I can believe for others it's okay to not be okay.
No, I think you just brought up probably the best point. You're not the only one, right? Yeah. And I think, and you and I being ambassadors for GTFO, I think this is kind of a good segue to jump in. I think it's okay to talk about it. I think the one thing that I think we're missing worldwide is that mental health hasn't been talked about enough. It hasn't been addressed, and it's starting to, but it's still in its very infantile stages. And it's okay to say, I'm not okay, and I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
Right. And that's important, is understanding there are other people out there. And what I strongly suggest is that before anybody feels like they're on an island all by themselves, is go on Facebook, reach out. There are so many resources that are out there that you can tap into, where other people are struggling with the same similar things, whatever it is. And it doesn't matter what it is, but there's resources out there. And I think when I was working with the veterans and first responders, I was an adaptable golf instructor, and
Okay.
we did clinics a couple times a year, and I worked with golfers throughout the year as well. But what we found was people didn't know what adaptable golf was, or that there were PTS or the Brain Institute of Texas, where we had started working a little bit with, and those resources existed, but nobody knew that they were there.
Mm.
And that still is today I think one of the biggest barriers for mental health, PTS, a TBI, is that the resources just aren't readily available, or it's not in one centralized spot for somebody to get their hands on,
And
even
then,
with the internet.
and there's also just the personal aspect of it as well. It's like, is someone ready to take that next step? Is
Yeah.
there a safe environment? Like for me, now that I'm 50, it took a long time for these things to become, it's not even the norm yet. Just like what you were saying, right? It's still, we're trying to get it up there. We're trying to end that silence. We're trying to talk about it more. And so there are more resources right now, but sometimes people don't know where to go because it can be so isolating. And I only know from my experience, I'm such an expert of my own PTSD, is that where do you go? Where do you start? And it could be simply with working with you, for example. It's like, well, you know what? I'm just going to have a goal. And maybe through running, they may recognize something. They may recognize a mental health issue. And why am I blocked? Why am I blocked? Well, the running just becomes a catalyst.
Absolutely.
You know,
And I think even, we've had, and I can share a story. So one of our board members of the foundation years ago took his own life, which really hit close to home. It wasn't the first time that we would deal with suicide close to our family. But I will tell you, this was a veteran. He was very self-aware, was into self-care. And I think, once you get into those throes, so I think as a coach, one of the things that we try to do is try and address some of these things when you're not in the middle of a PTSD scare, or, not in the middle of a breakdown, when you're not thinking clearly and things can happen. Because there are programs out there, there are things that we can discuss and tools that we can put in place when that does happen. And even doing that, no guarantee, right? It's a terrible disease. I think suicide in our country has just, and maybe it's because of the media, because we see it more often. And it's out there with, across social media and radio and TV and blogs. And so I don't know if it's more prevalent now than maybe 15 or 20 years ago, but it certainly seems like it.
it seems like it's more talked about. You're hearing about it a lot. There's a lot more younger generations. I just recently lost an acquaintance friend of mine to suicide just a few weeks ago. And, just such a beautiful spirit. But yeah, it was, the world is too much.
Yeah.
Sometimes the world is too much. So,
and I think you bring up a great point. And I think making sure that we reach out to those that we've kind of lost touch with. I've got plenty of people that I left in Texas that, when I lived down there for 4 years in my main running group, and I make sure that I try and check in. And sometimes life gets in the way and I don't check in as often, but I just did it the other day with somebody who just hadn't been posting, that I know suffers mentally from time to time. And it was like, hey, haven't seen a post out yet. How you doing? You okay? I'm thinking about you. And sometimes that's enough. And I don't think we do that enough.
Yeah.
And just thinking, hey, we need to reach. And those are kind of like, you and I had talked earlier when we were going back and forth how we wanted to structure this. And I think some of the tools are really simple. Reach out to your friends and family. Just let them know you're there and that you're thinking about them. You never know what that may, or how big of an impact that may have.
Even just a small message. I know that sometimes, I've received just a message from a friend checking in, and it just warmed my heart so much. It's like, wow, you thought of me today, thank you, and it really does mean a lot. I think we kind of a little bit digressed from your work and from track and everything.
Oh, we would.
Yeah, I figured, we're just going where it's going to go. But I did want to know something, and I had written this down here. It's like, why and how do you feel that running is a positive impact on your clients and their mental health wellness?
Oh gosh, how many reasons would you like?
What do you got?
We know that but and we'll just run on some bullet points.
Okay.
We know that, exercise impacts your physical health, which in turn affects your mental health and helps reduce symptoms of depression. That's proven. I think getting out inside, getting out in the sunlight, has an impact on your circadian rhythms and your overall well-being. Being one with nature, right? Improving your mood. Those are some of the things that we see. Socialization, if you're part of a running group. Even when I'm running solo, and I tend to run solo a lot, when I'm on the trail, I pass a lot of mountain bikers if we're running the mountain bike trails and have had great conversations. It's just nice to know that other people are out doing what I do and there's a sense of community to it. I think it builds mindfulness, whether it was golf or specifically, running and trail. I think just being self-aware, being present in that moment, and enjoying what's in front of you and what you're doing. I think it leads to creativity and inspiration. Can't tell you how many times I've come up with blog topics or brilliant ideas for a new invention that may never come to fruition. But while I'm alone on the trail and I'm listening to the birds and I'm running and looking at natural beauty, I've come up with just a lot of great ideas, names for, titles for books, for example. I think reducing stress and then relaxation. And then I think overall, if you're looking good and you're out there doing things and your self-esteem and self-confidence then start to improve. And I think all of those things, as you all know, have a huge impact on somebody's mental well-being.
Absolutely. Like I just know from my struggles and actually trying to get outside has been really difficult for me, which is why I just love the Get the Fuck Outside company. They have got great apparel, it's great. It's functional, I find it beautiful, but I just love the message behind it, which is get outside for your mental health. Right. And the fact that they donate to so many like mental health organizations, it's like, how could I not want to be a part of them? Right. Especially with this podcast and what I'm talking about. And, every time I have a chance to get outside, I'm not a trail runner. That's just the way it's going to be, but I do love hiking and snowshoeing. And with my depression, and especially over these past few years, very seldom have I ever gotten outside, actually. But the moment I can even take my dog into the backyard and I can get a little bit of that sun and a little bit of vitamin D, I'm like, oh, that's right. This is what's so important. Is just being outside, being in nature, because it's such a natural antidepressant, right? And I also love the concept that movement is medicine. I've heard that saying many times as well. So now you're adding the combination of running, being outside. Is most of your running and your coaching for outdoor? Like, is it for trail running specifically?
I tend to focus that way. We do work with a number of road runners as well as trail runners. It's kind of hard to, I'm not a road runner. I mean, I understand road running. I've run road marathons and it's been years, and I primarily do trails and ultra runs, which are primarily trail as well. That tends to be my focus more because that's my passion. Right. And that's what I love. And I see the benefits of it just within myself. Even dealing with some of my athletes, the improvement of, we didn't touch base on it, but I've got an athlete now that I'm working with, and this athlete was able to come off their medication, knowing full well, A, they're self-aware, but B, that they need to maintain their workouts. And it isn't just the running, it's getting into the gym because they're more apt to be in the gym and lift and do CrossFit and other things. And I don't particularly care, right? If you want to run, great. If our running program is curtailed and we build more of a workout program, fine, we'll accommodate that, right? But it had a huge and profound impact on their life, and because this was an individual that really just did not want to take meds, just didn't want the stigma, didn't want it for themselves, didn't like putting things in their body. And as a result, then we came up with a plan and said, okay, you need to adhere to your plan and you need to be accountable. That's the other part is being accountable. We keep a log in a journal, and it gets sent to me on a monthly basis. Hey, what did we do this month? What did your weeks break down? And that accountability helps them stay on their schedule.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So that's what you've noticed with one of your clients. Like, have you kind of noticed overall that anyone that's kind of coming to you for coaching right away, that they could be stuck in one spot and then you just see this shift, right? And they're just moving and, like, what is it for you as a coach to witness your clients go from one spot to another spot in whatever time, whatever length of journey that is? How is that for you?
It's without a doubt the best feeling in the world. And we'll kind of shift back to the golf for a minute. If you can imagine someone who's never hit a golf ball, or they've struck, like we know, everybody knows, and everybody says golf is hard. And if you've tried, you've hit balls, you've never got one up in the air, but the minute they get it and they get that ball airborne and you see that flight of the ball up against the sky, and you've had a hand in doing that and helping them achieve that, best feeling ever. And it goes across with the running as well, because when you hit milestones or you hit a PR, it doesn't matter if it's a second PR, a 5 minute, an hour, it's a distance you never thought you would achieve. Having had a hand in that and being part of that journey is absolutely fantastic. It's one of the best feelings ever.
Wow. So then how does your previous work working with first responders and veterans, what were you doing specifically with them, if you can talk about that? And has that then transitioned into T.R.A.C?
So we conducted clinics a couple times a year. These were adaptive clinics. So the qualification was, a veteran and or a first responder that had a physical disability. If you had symptoms from stroke, PTS, or a TBI, and you were welcome to attend the clinics. And we did these with not only OTs and PTs that came in the Veterans Hospital. We worked with the Dingle Hospital, and we also did this down in Texas for a few years. I think it taught us, and to give you an example, hitting golf balls, the clicking of the golf ball, could trigger PTS symptoms in certain individuals. So being mindful of those individuals and moving them further down the range and to accommodate them. We were, inclusive, so everybody was welcome. But it was also working with friends and family and caretakers as well. So it isn't just the individual. It's kind of a team effort, right? I think we tend to forget that there are caretakers and loved ones that are dealing with these things as well. On top of it. So, I learned a lot when I started. I had gotten my master golf teaching certificate and had run with a runner that was on the carbon fiber foot, the flex foot. And that kind of shifted. And I said, you know what, I want to do that with golfers. And so we just kind of winged it. I learned a lot from a lot of different sources on how to deal with PTS. I went and with Penn State and the Salute Military Golf Association took a full weekend course on adaptive golf. And that's where we put our focus for 9 years. Mm-hmm. And it was great working with those individuals and learning from them because it was a complete learning experience. 2014, we were nominated for a Da Vinci Award.
Yay, what is that? Explain that.
So the Da Vinci Award was recognition for outside and recreational sports. And it was done by the MS Society, and it was a high honor. It was a global nomination for us, which was really exciting. It was just great to be nominated because we were seriously a self-funded, small, little nonprofit. But we were doing a lot of good work in the community, and so we were very proud of that. I think overall, it taught me a lot about mental health because while I was familiar with it, I don't think to the degree that we all should be. And, in dealing with veterans that were coming in that in the middle of a clinic may have an issue that we would need to stop and deal with and be cognizant of that and be compassionate about that. Learning how to plan for those things before we even got on the range. And asking the right questions and knowing what those individuals' needs were. And so I think we were able to take a lot of those things and now introduce them, years later into the running and know what questions to ask, what things to look for, and then have the resources available if it's beyond, because obviously not being a medical professional, right, I'm just a coach, being able to have those resources available to say, hey, this is a referral. You may need this, and this, and having those resources, whether it's a veteran, a first responder, or anybody else.
Yeah. Well, because I always feel like it takes a team, right? Like I have a team. I have, therapists, I have doctors, I have other healers as well, and friends and loved ones, right? So it takes a team of people because there's so much information and different tools and techniques. And I know for me, just having that kind of support across the board has really made a positive impact for me, even through all the challenges that I still face. It's like I can no longer imagine doing this alone, which is what I had done for so long, because mental health is difficult to talk about.
Harrison, I'm gonna flip the script on you a little bit.
Oh, good
What
God.
do you feel like was your and because you've been very vocal about what you've dealt with and over the years, what do you feel like was the biggest barrier that you faced in terms of finding the help that you needed and during the times that you needed it?
Wow, that's a pretty in-depth question. It's not just one answer. The thing that I found to be most difficult was the shame and the guilt. It was actually quite personal, and just not knowing that it was okay to feel the way that I was feeling, and that I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who to talk to because I didn't know that it was safe to talk to. I didn't understand what I was experiencing. I would just hear feedback of how moody I was, and I would know how angry I was, and something was just not right. I just wasn't right. And the truth is, it's just finally opening up and talking to someone, and then hearing that, oh yeah, no, I've had that too. And it's like, oh, what? And then what do they do? Right? Well, then someone suggests something, and then somebody suggests something else. So for me, honestly, I think I was the biggest resistance because I didn't know. I had no clue until I could start to do research. And I mean, at that time, like really, there wasn't a lot of stuff on the internet. There wasn't a lot of resources. There's certainly a lot more resources now, which is great, but continuing to talk and share the information. Yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, and I think what you do in calling attention to it, and again, GTFO, right, and the support that they have and other organizations being out there. You didn't mention the Grizzlies though. That was the one you left out. Was
the Grizzlies? Oh yes. Sorry, I my mistake. I couldn't align with that thought. Yes, they do. I was actually asking Curtis. He's the co-founder of GTFO, and I was asking him about some of the organizations, and he did say the Grizzlies. Yes, he did. So
I love that part. I love that part.
Yeah, it's so wonderful. That's why I'm so excited to keep talking about it. Really, people can get the gear or not. Get outside for nature. While we still have it. Honestly, get out for your health. That's just how I feel about it. But, they just support so many organizations, which is amazing. And they've helped me as well. Like, I know that as an ambassador, yes, I get a discount, which people can get. I'm Ursula 10, if people want to get a 10% discount. Are you Scott 10, Scott 15, Scott whatever?
I think it's Millman 10, actually.
Millman 10. Okay.
Off the top of my head.
Yeah. So it's like, if people wanted to check this out, there you go. Get an instant 10% discount using Millman 10 or Ursula 10. How are you implementing GTFO with your work or your clients or anything? Or are you? I mean, it's not a yes that you have to do kind of thing.
No, but I think it's important though, because of what they do. And I think when you're an ambassador, when you say, hey, I want to be an ambassador for your product, if the companies that I've affiliated with or chose to affiliate with, like Orange Mud and Zensa and Squirrel's Nut Butter, which I love that name, by the way, it's one of my favorites. Solid Stick and GTFO. I think it's incumbent upon us as ambassadors to if you're going to call yourself an ambassador and you actually sought out those companies because you like what they stood for or their products or both, that you try and promote those brands as much as possible. And GTFO, obviously supporting what they do with what we're talking about here, and their mission and the things that they donate to, and being a small family run company, those are things that I hope this year that we'll standardize and we get to promote them more and call more attention to the good that they're doing, the products that they have, but mostly their mission, because the mission that they have on raising awareness and supporting those organizations that support mental health is hugely important. And I think their time is now, along with all of the other organizations that are doing similar things. I think we need it. I think it's really needed coming out of COVID. I think, I was talking to my daughter earlier today, and I said, what is it that we're seeing, individuals just kind of lose it? They lost their job, or they, weren't happy to dance, and they walk in with a gun and, they shoot up the place and take their own life.
Yeah.
Something's amiss. We're missing something somewhere. And I think this is just kind of one piece. But it's upsetting that I have a grandson and that I have a young daughter who's not young, she's 15, that are growing up seeing this, because this isn't the world that I want them to grow up in. And it's sad. I think the Twitch from the Ellen DeGeneres show.
Yeah, that was so upsetting.
Right. So you got to wonder, the guy's got a good career. He's got a family and kids. And then, and what do we always hear? We didn't expect it. We never saw it.
Yeah.
So somewhere we're missing it. So I think supporting GTFO this coming year is going to be one of our core missions, is to really raise awareness and support them and encourage other people to support them so that they could give back more, because that's, I think, the kind of a grassroots effort that we can all kind of buy into.
Yeah. And I've said it before too. COVID was certainly a global pandemic, but so is mental health, right? That's more and more and more people are suffering with some form of mental health. I don't want to say illness, because I feel like it's something that can't be cured, and it totally can. Everyone has their own journey, but mindfulness practice, forms of healing. Maybe it's medication, maybe it isn't. Maybe it's outdoors, maybe it isn't. But there are so many ways to heal. And until we keep talking about it, until we keep creating that resonance, like, oh gosh, that was me too. Oh, what, you too? Oh, wow, I didn't know that. How did you deal with it? Da, 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 da. And that's why we just need to keep talking, sorry, excuse me. And that's why
I think that's an interesting point, because I think we are talking about it a lot. I think we see it in social media. We've seen it with stars. We've seen it with singers, but there seems to be something missing still, because we're still dealing with the same issues over and over again, even though it seems to be more talked about and kind of more accepted. I don't know what we're missing there yet.
Then I wonder if, because we hold, this is just a totally personal thought, is we hold celebrities to a higher esteem, right? So, and it could be one criticism is like, oh, well, they already have all the resources. They've got the money. They've got this, they've got that. But the truth is, I think, like what I had touched on earlier, is like, it's so individual and it's so internal. Is that person ready to move forward? Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I don't know. We can't, like, for using Twitch as an example, we don't know his thought process or anything. So, the majority of people who do suffer, do they have access to the resources and access not only just to receive the information, go get the information, can they afford the process? Can they afford the treatments? Can they afford the therapy? I've been extremely lucky I had one therapist at one time gift me his time, because there was no way I could afford it. I'm on long-term disability, right? So this is just simply, I'm doing this out of a need to speak. So, are there sliding scale options? So there is a financial component, I find, even if you are going to do something perhaps alternative or spiritual, whether that's classes, courses, different therapies, maybe there's travel involved, other books, you have to purchase books. So I think there's a lot of factors involved into that. What are we missing? It's so personal. It's so individualized that when they're ready to come and talk and feel safe and share, then I think those resources can come to them. I don't know. That's why I think we just have to keep talking. And that's why I love about doing this podcast, is that's why I wanted to interview you. Well, what is it about running? right? What is it about track? What are you witnessing? What are you coaching? This could be a resource for someone that they never would have thought of. It's like, well, geez, I never would have thought that maybe I just have to go buy a pair of running shoes and head out. Or again, just like GTFO, well, gee, I never thought of maybe just go to the park and walk my dog out there and just feel that. Right. So having that kind of information, I think just spreads the wealth, and we get that. I don't know if we'll always find that answer. What are we missing?
May not, but I think it's a question that we need to keep asking. It's like, what are we missing? What is it that we're falling short on?
Yeah.
And seeing if we can ever bridge that gap, because the closer we get, the better off I think we're all going to be. And I think, like you said, I think track, and I think what Laura and I do, I think it's just one component. It's just one resource out of many. And like you said, the individual has to be receptive to it. That's one thing we know. And it doesn't matter what it is, right, in life, until you're ready. A million people could tell you, hey, smoking's going to kill you. But, I know with my dad, he quit many times over before he passed, but yet he wasn't ready.
Yeah.
So it didn't matter what information or what resources were there. I don't think it was going to help. And I think, like you said, I don't like referring to it as an illness. I think there are enough things out there and tools out there to help, be it medication, be it running, be it fishing, be it, equine therapy. I mean, there's so many things that are out there that are available. I think you just got to be ready for it, receptive, and then to try and take advantage of it. Like you said, I don't think we should allow money to have to be a barrier to somebody that wants and or needs the help. And I think the VA hospital has kind of fallen short with our veterans. I've seen it throughout the years. These are people that have sacrificed, and their families have sacrificed for our country. And I think we need to do a much better job of supporting them and getting them the resources that they need, because they're 30 times more likely to commit suicide. We hear the 22 a day. There's an organization called 22 Kill to call awareness. And just as a sidebar, I believe the project's called 7X. I believe there's a group of veterans and team that are doing. They're jumping out of a plane. They're doing a marathon, and then they're doing I wouldn't call it a polar plunge because some of the areas are warm, but they're going to do a plunge to kind of raise awareness along those lines about suicide amongst veterans. So again, there's so many organizations out there that are trying to call attention and doing wonderful things out there. I think we just need to continue to share those.
Yeah. Amazing. So as we conclude here, is there anything final that you would like to add?
And I think we've covered a lot.
We did.
I think that, the biggest thing is I think anybody that's listening, if you are struggling, if you are in a dark period, reach out to somebody. Don't be afraid to say, hey, I need help, or say, hey, just something's not right. And, do you know of somebody? Just ask the question, just reach out. And conversely, if you're listening and you know somebody that you haven't heard from a while, or just something seems different, or they're acting different, you never know what goes on behind closed doors is kind of the thing that I always throw out there. You never know what somebody's dealing with, what they're going through. It, like you said, and what we touched on at the beginning, reach out and just say, hey, I'm thinking about you. I care about you. Do you need anything? And that may be enough, because you never know.
Yeah, I think that is so true. You just never know. So thank you so much, Scott, for coming on, sharing your insight, your experience, your advice, your thoughts, everything. Really appreciate it. I think the listeners are really going to appreciate it. And friends, I hope you join us. Join me for another conversation down the road with somebody else. We've got some more GTFO stuff to talk about, to do some giveaways. Still want people to enter in for those giveaways. And so thank you, Scott. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
To find out more information about T.R.A.C. and about Scott and Laura, go to www.totalrunningandconditioning.com. You can also find them on Instagram at TRACLLC21 and also on Facebook at T.R.A.C. LLC. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you require more support and information on depression, please contact your local healthcare provider, distress center, or in Canada, go to canada.ca and search mental health support get help.